Good evening and welcome to Doc and Sock. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South. Mississippi, the Garden State. I always like to say down in Mississippi, the air is just a little bit cleaner and the grass is just a little bit greener. We are a blessed state. We are one of the larger states, but yet we have the smallest population. There are less than 3 million people in Mississippi, and 45% of those are African Americans. Dr. Henderson said during this period of slavery there were more Africans in Mississippi than there were Europeans. At one time there were more Choctaws in Mississippi than there were anything else. As a matter of fact, the Choctaw Nation ruled the state of Mississippi until they ran into Andrew Jackson, who decided that we don't really need any more Choctaws in the state of Mississippi, so we went through what was called reclassification. You could not be Indian, you had to be either black or white. And when we reclassified everybody, some black families were split right down the middle. Some got classified as white and some got classified as black. And those that didn't get classified had to hide out in the Mississippi swamp on the banks of the Pearl River, down in there where no man has ever gone. There are still places in Mississippi that man has not gone. If you take your boat and go up the reservoir, up to the Pearl River, and go up through the banks of the Pearl River, you will see something that you can't even imagine. There are all kinds of enclaves. There are kinds of tent houses. There are rebel flags flying. There are people speaking a different language, and it's very, very frightening. I know I was afraid as a young black man in my boat in the Pearl River, and when I drove up in that community, I knew I was in the wrong place. You know, at some point in time, you know when it's time for you to go. And I had to make that decision quickly and turn the boat around and come back down south. So in Mississippi, you can still run into some intriguing places, some intriguing people that are not a part of the rest of society. They live in their own little worlds. And a lot of that goes on in Mississippi, and black folks have their own economy. You know, we're not a part of the economy in Mississippi. I recall when blacks had their own clothing stores in their homes. You could buy the shoes that you wanted from someone's house. Your grocery came from someone's house. Clothes were made at someone's house. And so blacks didn't have money, but they had the best barter system in the world. And therefore, we never went lacking. There was no real poverty in Mississippi when it comes to the kind of poverty that we experience today. By that I mean we never went to bed hungry. There was never a day that we went to bed hungry, because God had provided fish in the lakes and the creeks and the river, rabbits and squirrels in the woods, deer and quail all around you. If you didn't kill something that God prepared for you, then you had to grow your own cows and goats and chickens and hogs. It was just a way of life. Everything that you needed, we were all self-contained. Blacks in Mississippi are no longer self-contained. Blacks in Mississippi and across the world are on the verge of extinction. We're traveling down a road where there is no return. If we don't do something and do something quickly, then we will be no more. And you say, how is that possible? How can you eliminate a whole race or a whole society? How can you do that? Well, I want you to go over to Australia and ask the natives of Australia, where are they today? I want you to go up into Kosciuszko, Mississippi, and ask the Choctaw Indians, where are they today? I want you to go into North America and ask the Indians, where are they today? They are gone. Gone, gone. So don't think it can't happen. if you're not very careful, we will not be able to find a Palestinian. If things continue to go the way they're going, they'll just get wiped out. So history is history. And sometimes history is what a group of men decided, and they lied, created the lie and agreed upon the lie, and that became history. All kinds of things make up history. But now, if you're watching us on Facebook, we want you to share this program with your friends and family. Subscribe, send us stars. We need your support. And we appreciate the work that you're doing because we're growing every day. If you're watching us on YouTube, then go on and subscribe to the program. Our numbers are growing all of the time. We are now entering the partnership program on YouTube. You know, the most difficult thing of all was those viewing hours. So it needs y'all to look a little bit longer than you have been. Our numbers are off the chain in terms of the number of views, but the length of time that you're viewing because of the short retention span is suffering. So we need a little help there. And so I know you guys will do that for us. If you're watching us on our very own website, WeBelieveDigital.com, you know that we are different. We are not a page. We are, in fact, a platform. On Roku TV, our app sits there between Showtime and Netflix. We pull right up next to the big boys, and they asked us when we pull up there, are y'all lost? Do you know where you're going? You don't belong in here. And we said that we are here to stay. We are on our way to becoming a major network throughout this country. Now, as always, my co-host, Dr. Eldridge Henderson, is here with me, one of the most sought-after men and speakers in the whole country. You know, if you really want somebody to come speak to your churches, your organizations, your schools, you can't find a better person than Dr. Eldridge Henderson. He's book smart, but he's street smart. I always tell you that he was born on a Mississippi plantation. I'm never going to let that get by because you don't really understand how critical that is to have such a humble beginning. Have that kind of humble beginning. Ask all of the people that you celebrate today as giants in America, put them on the plantation at birth and see who they would have become then. Put Joe Biden on the plantation at birth and see where he would have gotten to then. Booker T. Washington said it's not the heights that you obtain, but it's the depths from which you came. So my co-host, Dr. Eldridge Henderson, is a man amongst men. Sir, it's always good to see you and good to be in the studio with you.
Thank you, Mr. Socrates. I'm proud to be here as usual, and I just hope you have some good news tonight about your relatives and friends, the people that I call black Mississippians and black Americans and blacks worldwide. You told me just a few minutes ago that black folks have some hard roads to hoe, and if we don't start doing something different, we'll end up like those people you mentioned in the introduction, the so-called Native Americans and the others that were able to pass for white and disappear and left their cousins down in Kosciuszko, down on the coast, up in the northern part of the state around Memphis and places like that. So you are saying basically that black folks got some hard times ahead. I agree. And I'm telling you, we are very, very concerned because we have let certain things destroy us, and we are to blame, and we'll talk about that later on.
Well, Doc, this is February. This is Black History Month, so I want to deal with it. We talked about those things because we no longer can find the Chickasaw Nation that was in Mississippi. We can't find the Natchez Nation that was down in the southern part of the state, the Natchez Indians. We can't find the Choctaw. So we know that history can get away from you unless you preserve it, unless you record it and you make it available to generations to come. They will have no earthly idea where they came from and who they are.
Well, that is correct, and that is done, believe it or not, so you can have a smooth, seamless, racist society. When you don't know who preceded you, you don't have anything to worry about. You don't have no other examples other than the people that your writers write about. To give you an example, I was looking at some historical YouTube film today that were historically researched, and they were talking about the Wright brothers. Got a patent for their airplane in 1809, but there was a black man invented an airplane, got his patent from the government in 1903.
A black man.
A black man, which you don't hear about, and this is documented. He sent his plane to a contest so he could fly with the others. Black man now invented the plane himself, and his plane disappeared. You know, he crated it up, sent it to something like a county fair, and they were going to exhibit some of those new flying machines, as they called it. And his plane disappeared. Somebody stole it, allegedly, and probably just kept him out of the competition. And he had a large family, and according to the researched information, he never did get back into that, but he raised his family. He ended up owning property. He was a businessman. And the good part about it, he was born in slavery, and he taught himself to read and write. And he learned math on his own, and he was able to practice writing blueprints. And he was able to get a patent on his airplane. Wow. I didn't even learn that until today, and I was a history major.
So, Doc, let's talk about black people that have done well, that have fought against all odds, insurmountable odds, but still have achieved. Now, you often talk about that period of time after slavery, that blacks seem to be well on their way of moving into mainstream, into the middle class, and making a real contribution. What was that period of time called?
Well, that was the so-called Reconstruction period, but all at the same time. Now, that only happened from 1868 to 1877, and that were not a smooth period. It was not smooth at all. There was that transition from slavery to so-called political independence. Black people in Mississippi outnumbered the white, and according to my information, when they registered voters, the black people in Mississippi, there were 79,176 African men and 58,385 white men in Mississippi. So you see, we had a major majority during that period. And the white men were so concerned until they say, we cannot allow this to happen. And of course, you know what happened in a few years. The white folks in the northern part of the country forgot about black folks. They started thinking about their own economic wherewithal and positioning themselves. And they wanted to get back with the white folks in the South. And that's exactly what they did. They made a compact and said, we're going to turn your darkies back over to you. We are going to not give them anything. And they set up that tenant and sharecrop system. And we've been in that up until today. There are still a lot of black folks living on plantations in Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, that the families for 6 generations had never owned an acre of land. But at the same time, we had thousands of people in Mississippi and other southern states that owned sometime, if you do the research, 16 or 18 or 19 million acres of land after slavery up until the 1960s. And they gradually now lost land down to about 2 million acres throughout the whole United States, from almost 20 million acres.
Now, Doc, we talk about black people and the struggle, and we talk about that period of time, etc., but there were white people that were involved. I often wonder what kind of person was John Brown, that I hear blacks speak not enough about, but sometimes.
Well, John Brown, as you know, was what some today would call him a liberal. He believed that black people were human beings and that they should have rights as other citizens. He wanted them to be independent individuals. He wanted black people to register and vote. He wanted them to have the ability to start businesses and just be like all the other people. he and his sons. He was accused of being a religious fanatic. Anytime you're doing anything to help black folks, you're going to find that you're going to be designated as something other than average. They did not turn it the same way.
We're going to talk about John Brown. Well, we have a call on the line. So, caller, you're on the line.
Hi, Mr. Socrates. This is Mrs. Lewis calling from Chicago.
Go ahead, caller.
Hello?
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I just tuned in, so I don't know what the subject is about tonight. The topic is about. I just heard what Doc said about John Brown, and that's true.
Yeah, well, Doris, we were talking about, black achievements and black history and the struggles, etc. And we got to a point where I asked Doc, to tell me a little bit about John Brown, because he's an individual that we don't celebrate during black history. And I wonder why.
Well, we don't celebrate him, even though he made a contribution to our struggle. But we don't celebrate him because he's not black. That's one reason why we don't celebrate him. Black History Month is specifically about celebrating the accomplishments of black Americans. So that's one reason I would say we don't celebrate him. Well, even though, as I said, he did make a contribution to our struggle.
He did make a contribution to our struggle, and we need to recognize that, and we need to talk about that a little bit more, because it may inspire some other white people that want to speak out, but just are not courageous enough to do so. So we have to give them examples. What other white people have played a major role in advancing freedom and economic opportunity to black people? Who comes to mind for you, Doris?
Not really. I mean, you would. People think about John Kennedy, but he did do some things. He did not live long enough to do some of the things that he was espousing at the time. Even though after his death, Johnson did carry on some of those plans that he talked about, some of the things he talked about, and that's how it came about, with the 64 and the 65 Civil Rights Act. But, there have always been a few whites who done something here or there, but I think that is an issue that we should focus on specifically, because I don't think anyone else is going to save us but us. If we were to get involved and do more of what we used to do, if we would do it collectively, I think that we could accomplish a lot more during this time than we've accomplished in a long time. But again, nobody's going to save us but us, because no one understands the issues, the struggles, the things that we've encountered and experienced in this country. So it's going to have to be black people who will save black people. I don't look to other people to save black people. It's going to have to be us.
Well,
and right now...
Yeah. Oh, your point there. Now, Doc, she makes a point that it's going to have to be us, but yet we don't have the abilities on a large scale to change our condition and our position in America. And so unless we get some help from this government, unless we get some help from others, whether they be other countries, whether they be other races, unless we get some assistance, it's going to be hard for us to pull ourselves up from this position that we find ourselves in today.
I disagree, sir, 100%. The problem,
I do too.
The black man's problem is self-imposed. We had an opportunity many years ago to accept or reject racism, integration versus self-hatred and self-motivation. We accepted integration. The worst thing, I told you before, the second worst thing ever happened to black people. We lost more in integration that is impacting us today than we did during any other period since black men were in America. That move, where we always said that we love our enemy more than we love ourselves, say, let me go and eat, sleep, and work for my enemy who has told me in his constitutions and in his state laws, in his city and county laws, that I'm insignificant. I'm not a human being. You can't vote. You can't get a free public education. You can't do anything because you're a savage. You are not a real man. You are property. Even after slavery, and we had a chance to have our grocery stores, banks, and other things that we mentioned up before the show. And we say we want to love our enemy more than we love ourselves. And that's why black folks in the position they are in today. And if they stop thinking about integration and start practicing self-motivation and making an effort to do the things for themselves and stop depending on the government, they won't ever get anywhere. I know of not one instance in the history of America before slavery, during slavery, and after slavery where they passed an equitable law that treated black folks the same way they treated blacks. Not one that I know of. Now you talk about the Civil Rights Acts, the Voting Rights Acts, the Housing Act. All of those were weak, racist laws that were designed to appease the minds of black folks and white liberals. But at the same time, the federal government, the state government, and others knew they didn't have no way to enforce those laws. Never did and never will.
Yes, Doris, go ahead.
And you know what? And I agree with Doc. Didn't anybody help us get where we are? We did it ourselves. And it was never a whole lot of people. Ida B. Wells, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and on and on and on. We did this ourselves. Nobody did this for us. And as Doc said, we didn't integrate, we assimilated. We never integrated they never integrated with us. We assimilated. And as a result of that assimilation, integration, we lost everything. We built towns, we built schools, we built churches, we built communities with a little of nothing. We have more money now than we've ever had in our lives in this country. It's just that it's not being redirected in the right direction, and that is back to the black community. We're $1.3 trillion. 98% of that money goes to everybody else but the black community. We've got to change the narrative and our way of thinking. We are in our own way because, as Doc just said, we're still running after integration, and that has literally destroyed us. We have nothing. We have less today than we had 65, 70 years ago.
Hold your point, Doris. Hold your point. So, Doc, what does that look like? Paint a picture for me where blacks are governing themselves, doing the right things that we've been talking about. What does that look like, and how does it look different than where we are today?
Well, I don't know of any country or state in the world where blacks are governing themselves at a high level, specifically economically and politically.
Hold it over there. You're trying to tell me that model does not exist anywhere in the world?
Not in our world today that I know of.
Mm-hmm.
I can't name not one country, not one state, not one nation in the world on the 7 continents. Everywhere black people are, we allow others in our community, whether it's a majority or a minority, to determine our destiny from birth to death, economically, politically, socially, religiously, and in leadership positions. All over the world. We are to blame for our condition. We let our God be the government. Man is his own God. He determined his destiny. He must determine his destiny in education and economics. To give you an example.
Oh. God means everything to black America. I mean, Sunday mornings, we're filled with the Holy Spirit, and religion plays such a major part in who we are and what we do, how can you say that man is in charge of his own destiny and not God?
Well, I'm saying that because it's a reality. You are saying you're using the racist European American concept where you have been telling your folks, and I hope you don't believe that today, that white man's God is more important than the black man's God, who could be himself if he decided to do something for himself economically and politically.
Mm-hmm.
You can't depend on the government.
Mm-hmm.
I have never known the federal or state governments to do anything for black people or any other dark colored person in the history of America. Name one thing. You can't find anything in education. You can't find anything in economic development. You can't find anything in the military where there was equitable treatment for black folks. Always segregation within integration. The same thing at the school system after so-called 1954. It took 20 and 30 years to integrate the systems, and then by 1990, integration started moving backwards, and now we have more segregation, and a lot of people don't believe it, than we had in 1954 in America. The so-called private schools just started a few years ago to allow a few blacks to play football and basketball at these white racist academies throughout the South. And they only get 2 or 3 so they can get that federal money and declare that they
get that money. You're right.
Mm-hmm. And they can get those boys. And I tell the joke a lot of times, a lot of those guys can't even spell football or basketball backwards, but they can play. And they will get scholarships to community colleges. Most of them can't leave there and get one to a senior college, and they play there for a while. And if they get real good, of course, they can get to a senior college, but they won't ever finish. If they're good enough, they might make pro, 2 or 3 of them. Otherwise, they're going to drop out because those kids were always given favorites, pass them social promotions, brainwash them to make them think they're going to be a professional. And that's not going to change unless we start determining our own destiny, creating through our community organizations and churches, our own training institutions, whether you like it or not. And on the top of that, you heard Doris say we have so much money in America, black folks. And if you would have a white revolution in America, if during the next 6 years, the black folks would create about 600 banks in America with the money they have, with the impetus coming from the black religious denominations. Everywhere you have a black church, it should unite with others and create their own banks. Anywhere you have an accumulation of churches in any town or any community where you have 600 members or more, you ought to create your own bank or insurance company, your health agency, your hospitals, and then build those resources. Train your own doctors and lawyers. You don't need the government. The government not going to do that for you. They have something called affirmative action. I don't want to go on and on. I can talk about this for 2 days. This stuff is designed to get you frustrated and confused. And if you get too successful, even when you were in those what I call affirmative action programs, they fixed it where a lot of them black people start jumping out of those college dormitory windows, start getting so confused and sick and homesick and mentally ill, they had to leave those colleges and then go on back to the black college or university where they should have been at the first place.
Doc, we're up against a commercial break. Doris, when we come back from this break, I want you to take the city of Jackson, your hometown, and I want you to tell me why blacks are in control in every position in this city and why we're not doing better. So stay tuned and stay with us. We're going to be right back after this commercial.
Have you had your Earthblend coffee today? At Earthblend Coffee, we take pride in offering you the very best of beans across the world, blended and roasted to perfection, giving you superior quality and satisfying and flavorful taste. Experience the world in one cup.
SocratesGarrettNT.com is a diversified firm specializing in recycled aggregates and crushed concrete. SocratesGarrettENT.com's recycled materials provide the construction industry with significant economic and environmental benefits by recycling clean concrete rubble into MDOT grade rock materials. Recycled aggregates and crushed concrete can be applied to driveways, road construction, bank protection, parking lots, general bulk fills, and more. For more information, please call 601-896-0084 or visit us online at SocratesGarrettENT.com.
Welcome back to Doc and Sock. We're broadcasting live right here in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, we're having somewhat of a difficult conversation. Some could say a heated conversation. And we're talking about the status and the plight and the condition of black folk. Now, this is Black History Month, and we spent some time talking about all of the achievements and the accomplishments of African Americans throughout the world, from the invention of a plane, as Doc said, by a black man in 1903, and we could go on and on and on about the accomplishment that blacks and the contribution that we made. But we find ourselves in a downward spiral economically. Our families are being broken up. We seem to be lost as a race anywhere throughout the world. But I've asked our guest, Doris, to chime in, and let's focus a little bit on Jackson, Mississippi, a city that is controlled by African Americans and a county that is controlled by African Americans. And why is it that we're not doing better in this particular situation? Doris, can you hear me?
Yes, I do. Jackson is in the condition that it's in because the leadership of Jackson doesn't have a vision. They don't have a vision in the county. They don't have a vision in the city. If we were to take just what Doc outlined and apply it to Jackson, Jackson could be a prosperous city that everybody would want to live in. We talk about God. Well, if we believe in God as much as we say we believe in God, why are we in the condition that we're in? Religion is being taught the wrong way to black people. The way religion is taught to black people, it's a slave form of religion. It's not a liberating form of religion. And God is in us. When I think about God, God is in me. But these ministers, the religious leadership in Jackson and elsewhere in the black communities around the country, they are not teaching the people properly. These churches bring in billions and billions of dollars every Sunday, right there in Jackson, as I just said. If they would take what Doc just outlined, we could turn Jackson around. You get black leadership running Jackson the way white folks ran Jackson. They don't have a plan. They just get into office. They have no plan. They have no vision for the people. They're in there. It's a status thing for them. It's symbolism, but no substance. You got to have a vision. You got to have a plan. People without a vision, according to the Bible, will perish. And we're perishing because there is no vision for us. There is no specific black agenda for black people. Every other race and ethnic group has an agenda for their people, for their children, for their future. We don't. And if that doesn't turn around, it's going to get worse. So that's why it's so important for us to have the conversations that we're having. And I'm participating, and I do what I do for the children, for the future. What kind of future will our children have? It's dismal when I think about these young people. Everyone is providing a future for their children, but us. But us. It's our fault.
Hold your point right there, Doris. Now, Doc. Now, Jackson, we talked about Jackson, and she says there's no vision. But it could be that Jackson is in the middle of some of the worst soil for blacks in the country. Now, I think the worst city in America when it comes to black folk, of course, is Memphis, Tennessee. I think the issues there, and certainly the murder of Martin Luther King is at the top of that, but is Mississippi, Tennessee, or Alabama? Which one of those were absolutely worse for black people?
Well, they were none of them worse for black people. Those are major cities that had the economic base, had the climate, and had all kinds of opportunities for black folks to do whatever they wanted to do. Had a lot of land. They owned a lot of land. Plus, there was a lot of land that was free that they could rent or buy. But black folks never did use those powers. And I'm going to give you an example of what is happening now. Now, in my town where I live, they had a waste management contract. And I saw in the paper one day, some months ago, it says we're going to negotiate a contract from waste management for this city. I'm not going to name this city. A few weeks later, the paper said this city now has a new blank contract, millions of dollars, for waste management. You didn't hear no fussing about it. They talked about it in private, I guess, and then they voted. They had a little disagreement. Must have been in private council because you didn't hear anything when you turn on the TV and look at the city council meeting. But now in Jackson, they are going through the same thing. They have another contract coming up, and you don't hear much about it. I would hope that they are in private sessions now, agreeing on who and what contract they're going to have, and not wait for the last minute and then do like the Mississippi legislature, bring the contract forth and give it to the city council and say, vote on it, boys. And they haven't seen the thing, have not negotiated the particulars in the contract, and then be grandstanding and acting a fool and making everybody look at us like we're 2-year-olds and can't make a agreement on anything without fussing and fighting and acting like we're blind criminals.
Wow. I hope that we're not made to look that way. Doris,
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes.
My city concept for a moment, and I want to go back there because there are some real bad things that have happened to us that like the Jews, that we say we should never forget. And I think that the murder of Martin Luther King in Memphis, Tennessee, and the slaying of the civil rights leaders in Philadelphia, Mississippi, and the bombing of the 3 black girls in Birmingham, in Alabama, are 3 of the worst events that I can recall in black history. What say you, Doris?
The worst thing that has happened to black people in this country is when we were enslaved in this country for 240 years. We have always had to struggle in this country. We've never really been free in this country according to the white man's laws. But we fought. We built things. We worked together. We need to go back and look at this blueprint and look at what we did under some of the most extreme circumstances. Nothing could be worse than enslaving a race of people. That's the worst thing that's happened to us in this country. But we made it. We persevered. We had a plan. We had a vision. We didn't have a choice. See, we didn't have a choice. We either had to make it or we would just go under. We didn't have a choice, and we made decisions. We had a vision. Our people had a plan for us, and they worked that plan. You don't have a vision or a plan now for Jackson. Jackson is the perfect city, 85% black. It could be a thriving city if you had the religious and the political and the educational and the economic leadership that is needed for a people to survive. We don't have that. It is missing. It is lacking because, for the most part, the people who are in these positions don't care.
Wow.
They don't care.
Wow.
The majority of these people don't care.
And why they don't care. But, Doc, a lot of our people are locked up. Mississippi has more people in the prison systems than most third world countries, and 85% of that population is black men. And I saw on the news tonight that there is a black senator, Mr. Barnett, that said it's time to demolish Parchment, tear it down.
And replace it with what? What is he proposing to replace it with?
Well, probably another prison of sorts, but that one has such a terrible history that, and it means such horrible things to black people, till he thinks it ought to be torn down, just like you're removing pictures of statues and things of that nature from buildings.
No, that shouldn't be done. That's economically unsound. What they can do with that same prison, they can restructure that prison, make it an educational training institution with the same people that are in there, teach them life skills, teach them trades, and if they reach certain milestones during their life, if they have a 5 or 10 or 15-year sentence, and they put a life milestone there and say, if you finish this program, then get a certification in this program in 3, 6, 9 months, and when you get up to the top tier, we're going to pardon you and let you go home. You have a skill, we're going to have your job, you're going to have your certifications, your license, your work permits, and your job training certifications, and your business license, and you are getting out of here. And don't tear the prison down, just restructure it, get some professional people there that know about education and training, get a lot of national and international support, and turn them boys and those women are loose in less than half of the time, and they leave there with their driver's license, they get their cars and jobs, get them new apartments because they have learned financial literacy, they've learned about good social skills, they have had dormitories there where their children and their wives and girlfriends could visit them on weekends when they meet certain standards, and go on back and start off anew and turn them loose so they can vote. Hell, they have served their time, let them vote the next day after they get out of prison, and many then will surprise the world. They will then get out and get degrees in law and engineering, some go to medical school, and the whole family would be renewed.
Well, Doris, let's take that same concept then when we talk about immigration. And we talk about the Hispanics and Latinos that are coming into this country. Maybe at some
point I was about to say,
become model citizens and make a real contribution.
Well, I was about to say, do the same things for them that they're doing for these illegal immigrants. You know, as I just said, trades and all other kinds of educational programs. But that's not the purpose of prison for black people. This is about money. It's not about rehabilitation. Sure. It's not about liberation. It's about money and imprisoning black men and now black women and young black boys and girls. It's about money. It's on the prison stocks on the New York Stock Exchange. So this is about satisfying the stockholders that have stocks in these prisons. It's not about liberating and rehabilitating black people. And the black male, just black people, period, but particularly black male, it is a crisis. Black male is a crisis with black males now. Why are we not talking about this collectively? The religious community, the political community, the economic, the educational community. Why are we not talking about this? Why are we not talking about the causes? But all we do is deal with the effect. There's a cause and there's an effect. We have got to start looking at it in that way. And then we start working towards trying to get us out of the condition that we're in. So that means having a vision and a plan for your people. We've got to have a code of conduct in the black community. Too many things are too accepting in the black community. And we've got to turn this around if we want to survive. So we're in serious trouble.
How did we get to this status, Doc? How did we come from landowners and builders to our pants down below our buttocks and walking the streets carrying high-powered rifles? How did we get here? How did this country in America get to where it is with the insurrection on January 6th and the overthrow of the government and the mass shootings that are going on across the country, Colorado Springs and other places? How did we get here?
Well, it's very simple. It's a diversion that has been allowed by the people that make the policy, the legislators, the presidents, the governors, the members in the respective state houses, and so forth. They don't want to contain nor regulate criminal activity. They allow these gangbangers to buy guns. A crazy man can go and get a rifle, and anybody can get anything they want and shoot anybody they want. Some going to be pampered, others are going to be put in prison, some going to be killed on the spot, and others going to be arrested and take them to jail and say they have mental issues and put them in a mental institution instead of putting them in prison. And we allow these things to happen. We don't go and do what we should do when they start killing and burning up black folks in areas of the United States, north, east, and west. The black leadership that Doris just mentioned, the preachers, the corporate leaders, and the politicians can go and talk to the members in the House of Representatives, the sheriffs, the police chiefs, and say, this is happening in my community, just like the deacons of defense did in Mississippi and Georgia and other places. Say, this cannot happen anymore, Sheriff. You send your folks down here and let them do this. We're going to defend ourselves. How's this gotten?
You know what? Socrates, I think about Brandon, or I think about Madison when some black person does something in one of those little towns and they flee the town and they come to Jackson. Why do they feel so comfortable coming to Jackson? Because there is no code of conduct, there is no accountability. No one is saying, you will not come here and do this. They're not going to go up there to Madison County or over there in Rankin County and some of those all white towns and do some of the things that they do in Jackson. Because we're not saying we will not tolerate it here.
Doris,
so why do they feel so comfortable?
Let me tell you, Doris, what the problem is. Jackson is a sanctuary city. You can get away with anything. It's just like
that's it. You're absolutely right.
New York City, the immigrants can go there, get food, clothing, and shelter, and that's where they go. The Texas governor, the governor down in other parts of the country, in the southern part, sent them up there because they know they don't get food, clothing, and shelter. And if the black folks in your city and other places let your mayor give $40 and $50 million in housing and training and food and all kind of fee-paid cards to the immigrants, if you give $50,000 to those Hispanics and others coming illegally, demand that they give 50,000 homeless people in Chicago or New York City the same treatment, put them in similar apartments, in housing opportunities, put them in training programs, the same number. And if the lazy voters will do this, demand it, and tell those governors and those mayors, we are going to put you out on a referendum, we're going to have a recall, and if we can't vote you out, we're going to run you out of town.
Wow.
And you have to do that, and the others will start doing the right thing. You have to give a good fight on people sometimes, Doris and Socrates, and politically and embarrass them and show them that they can do better. Sometimes we need a good whipping.
And that is and that's what we're talking about in Chicago. This is the conversation that's going on in Chicago. And I'm very proud of what the residents of Harlem did recently, I think last week or the week before last, when the mayor tried to slip these immigrants into Harlem to a luxury condo building that was supposed to, somehow or another, the developers ran out of money and they didn't complete the task that they set out to complete. But the citizens have been asking the mayor to open that place up, make it an affordable housing complex, or put the homeless in there. He did not do it. So a week or so ago, people saw them moving boxes with beds, portable beds. And so they contacted the mayor, and they told him, they found out what they were doing. They were getting ready to put the illegal immigrants in there, and the citizens in Harlem, the people in Harlem, told him, no, you're not going to put these people here. And that's what black people are going to have to do in all of these cities where these people are coming into. And Doc, you're right. In every sanctuary city, it is chaos. It's absolute chaos in Chicago. Killings every day. And that black mayor does not say one thing about it, because the people of the city of Chicago are not coming out like they should to attack this man and go after this man for what he's doing. It's not done on the scale that it should be done because of the religious people. They're taking the faith-based money, buying off everybody. So it is what it is, and we are responsible for that.
Exactly. Now, let me tell you something, Doris, that you all need to do the following in Chicago and New York City. I said earlier, if 20 or 30,000 immigrants can get those houses and apartments and training programs, you all need to go down there on Skid Row and go under those bridges and in those woods out there in those parks, the people who live in a tent, and have them to march to that same building with their backpacks on and say, we're going to stay here until we get a room. I guarantee you they'll solve that problem in less than 3 days.
Now,
Yep. It's beginning to pick up, but not like it should.
Council of Jackson are building tiny houses, Doris, for the homeless people here in Jackson.
For what?
Is that a good strategy?
Oh, for the homeless, okay. As long as they're homeless black people, yes, it's a good strategy. It'll help.
Let me tell you something about these situations. That is not the best idea. They proved that down on Farris Street. They built some shotgun houses there. They lasted less than 6 months. They gave contracts to people that said they were contractors, and they were bad as my grandfather. They didn't know anything about construction, but he built houses and chimneys and so forth, and the thing would fall apart with the next sneeze or the next wind. And that's what they're doing with these tiny houses, and it's nothing but a political, corrupt, economic disaster, and it's not going to last. Who's going to pay for them? Who's going to live for them? Who's going to have a guaranteed job to pay the rent? Or are they going to buy them in how many years? Where are they going to get the money from? Will there be a good infrastructure? Will they have sidewalks there? Will they have schools? I bet you're going to find they'll put those places in places where they don't even have a school. And then how are they going to get there? Those kind of things that people...
That's a good point.
We're going to have to...
Another thing that happened...
Collective vision, something that we can all agree to. What are you saying, Doris?
Another thing that happened in Jackson, and it should not have happened, they tear down buildings in our communities. A lot of those houses, when Henry Kirksey was in office, and Henry told them that they should not allow that parkway that ran through Jackson State. They should not have gone along with that, but they did. And they tore down a lot of those old shotgun houses, but they were quality, they were steady houses. But where if you go over in some of the white communities, over by Millsap, all over in there, they don't tear down their structures. But when it comes to our communities, they tear down the structure. And that is for a specific reason, because they have another plan for it, to one day take over.
Doris,
So we have allowed a whole lot of things for us.
let me tell you something, Doris, and keep this in mind. This is a fact. The same people that maintain the housing in Fonry and others and tore down those around Jackson State are the same rich developers and others that's making the policy and determining what the black leadership does in those areas. That is to destroy the population. And these white people and contractors going to come around Jackson State University in a few years, and they're going to rehab those areas because they're going to run the blacks out of that area. They can't afford it. They have hundreds of houses there that's falling apart. In just a few years, those houses are going to be torn down. Every third house is going to be torn down. They're going to rehab some, put parks in other places. And when you know anything, they're going to have private schools, public schools, parochial schools in those areas, new apartments, and new stores and everything in those areas. And you won't find a black person there unless it's somebody like Socrates that has the economic wherewithal. And he's going to be so disappointed, he's going to leave and go back to his hometown and live on his daddy's land.
Look out, Doc. Look out. Now, we're coming to the end of our...
And black leadership allowed it to happen.
Of course they did.
Now, we're coming to the end of our program. We've always had lively conversations and talk about real issues. Doris, you mentioned to me that these are the conversations that people are really interested in, that are really being talked about in the African American community. It's not as much about Cat Williams and what he was talking about on Club Shay Shay. That's entertainment. This is real conversation, real dialogue, something that's missing in our communities. Now, in our closing remarks, Doc, I'd like for you just to explain to me, as part of your closing remark, how it is that a man became able just to kill another man, just to take his life. Whether you robbing him or whether you just don't like him, it didn't seem to me that that spirit was in black people until here in the last 10, 12 years.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you can easily be trained to kill. It all depends on the punishment that you think you're going to get. Now, many of us soldiers were trained to kill, and we were trained to shoot straight and lay low. I'm one of them. I was considered an expert marksman, and all I used to use back in the day was a slingshot. But when I got in that military, after we got in ART, Advanced Individual Training, I found out that if I wanted to survive, I'm going to have to learn how to kill somebody and don't even look at it as a major problem. And the people in the ghetto are taught the same thing. They know they have been told by silence that you can kill each other as long as you want, but the difference was I was trained how to hit the target, but these hoodlums in these neighborhoods are not trained how to hit the target. They go and spray and shoot anybody and everybody and don't have any serious repercussions.
Well, we got to get to the spirit of the man, Doris. In your final remarks, same question. I don't know how we got to a point where we could kill a person for his gym shoes or for $5. How did we get there?
Well, when you don't value yourself, when you don't value your people, when you don't value people who look like you, when you have been trained and taught that people who look like you are worthless, and there's no demand and accountability of these people who are doing it, you're not deal with the cause and the effect and holding people accountable. Until black life is valued, until we value black life. We don't value black life. We talk it, but we don't value it. And until we start valuing our lives and our children's lives and deal with the cause of what's causing all of this, then it's going to continue. It's going to have to be up to us. Nobody else is going to do this for us, Socrates. Nobody, because they don't care.
That's right.
Well,
or
that's
should they care?
show this evening. We'll be back here on Thursday to continue the dialogue, to try and find a way to make a difference in this community. The goal is to make a difference. Is to come up with a philosophy, a strategy, a vision that we can implement, that we have the ability and the power to implement, that will change the conditions and the quality of living for black people in our communities. Doc, any final remarks?
Well, I want to tell the people that are listening, there are going to be a lot of people talking to you all for the next few days in so-called Black History Month. And I want you to tell the people that you invite to your churches, your community organizations, your schools, and so forth, to talk about the present and the future of blacks. And I told you 2 weeks ago, if you're going to say anything about the past, you mention that person's name, tell them who killed him, and then move on to something that's going to tell you how to solve your problem currently and in the future, and start saying the timeline is 30, 60, and 90 days to do the following gradually, and then make it progressive and continuous. And this is way to get out of the government handbag. The government is not going to do anything for you, black folks. Nothing. They're supposed to keep you in slavery. They always have. They're not going to give you economic parity. If you even have a political position, you're not going to control the money. You're not going to make the decision on who to hire. I ought to give you a true story about a recent situation where they had a new leader and all kinds of outsiders came into the area with all the major positions of responsibility and being dictated to as to what you're going to do, and the people involved have no say about their future. None.
Doc, we got some difficult times ahead. Doris, your final comments.
Yep. I think what we're going to have to do, we are going to have to go after our young people. start focusing on our young people and teaching them a different kind of narrative, because the future is about them. And it can be done, but we're going to have to collectively work on developing and training a new generation of young people that are going to be concerned about the community, about their people, and not just about themselves or what they can accomplish individually, and forget about the community, forget about their people. We can't continue this way. We're going to have to go after our young people.
Thank you. That's it for tonight. We want you to stay safe, enjoy all of the programs celebrating Black history. We are a marvelous people with real accomplishments and achievements that have gone untold for so long. So I recognize and support all of the institutions, churches, and folk that are having programs celebrating Black History Month. Until Thursday evening, this has been Doc and Sock. Stay safe and good night.